to that breaking news tonight. A man has been taken to hospital with serious injuries after multiple people have been stabbed on a train in Huntington, Cambridgeshire, of course. And we've got some new footage to show you that we believe is from the scene.
Machetes in broad daylight, on high streets, in front of schools. Welcome to Britain. When knife attacks happen every 10 minutes, machete violence has skyrocketed 320% since 2000, and the government's best solution is kindness workshops? You didn't mishear that. While hospitals overflow with stabbing victims and gangs roam city centers unchecked, the state responds with superficial policies, vague promises, and strategic silence. Meanwhile, with tensions rising across the UK and thousands taking to the streets of London right now, it's more important than ever to see the full picture. If you want to stay updated on the situation as it unfolds, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. I'm covering the angles the mainstream media might miss, like this video if you believe in unfiltered reporting. The streets are spiraling into open chaos, and no one seems to be in control. Let's get straight to it. Over 53,000 confirmed knife attacks every year. That's not a crime spike, that's a collapse. You're looking at a country where urban safety is unraveling in real time, where public transport, schools, even your corner shop, feel less like civil spaces and more like ticking time bombs. The kind of place where stepping outside means rolling the dice. The government, nowhere to be found. Law enforcement, strained to breaking. Police are retreating from violent areas entirely, leaving entire communities exposed. And it's not just petty crime. It's machete-wielding gangs, organized violence, and roving packs of offenders that treat city blocks like turf war zones. Leeds, Birmingham, London, they're not just cities anymore, they're pressure cookers. This isn't just about the violence, it's about the complete failure to respond. Britain's justice system is crumbling under the weight of its own policies. The SDS-40 early release scheme alone has dumped over 40,000 reoffenders back onto the streets in just 1 year. And with prisons at 99% capacity, we're not talking about isolated bad apples here. We're talking about a revolving door of violent criminals, many of them released before finishing their sentences, walking freely in neighborhoods already hanging by a thread. And then there's the censorship. Authorities deliberately hide information about suspects, especially their nationality or immigration status. Not for legal reasons, not for privacy, but to avoid community unrest. Instead, they sow confusion. Important context is scrubbed from reports. Footage gets blurred. Details vanish. The public, left to fill in the blanks. And that's when rumor and resentment take over. People aren't stupid. They see the government more focused on protecting its image and protecting lives. And it shows. Across the country, protests have erupted, some demanding mass deportations, others slamming the government's passive approach. I know things feel really heavy in the UK right now. There's a lot of division and noise on the streets, but I want this channel to be a place where we can come together. If you want to be part of a supportive community, please subscribe. And like this video to show some love to everyone feeling anxious about the state of things right now. Stay safe out there, everyone. In some cities, it's turned violent. Arson attacks on hotels and migrant centers. Riots. Street battles with police. You think the government's got this under control? The police themselves are outnumbered, out-resourced, and increasingly out of sight. So, what do people do when the state fails them? They take matters into their own hands. And that's exactly what's happening. Black market pepper spray? Illegal, but people are buying it. Makeshift weapons? Everywhere. Local patrols? Forming in neighborhoods where trust in police has evaporated. This isn't hypothetical. It's real. Citizens are resorting to vigilantism not because they want to, but because they feel they have to. The message is clear. No one's coming to help. And if that wasn't enough, there's a growing divide within communities. The government's refusal to deport illegal arrivals, its reluctance to admit policy failure, and its focus on perception over truth have turned public trust into dust. Tensions are rising, especially as foreign nationals dominate overcrowded prison facilities, and local services buckle under the pressure. The health system, overwhelmed. Emergency rooms are now frontlines. And with every new violent attack, the sense of instability spreads. The UK's image abroad, in free fall. Foreign investors are pulling money out of London. Wealthy residents are moving assets overseas. What was once a financial hub is now a cautionary tale. And the political class? Paralyzed. Leaders like Starmer and Farage offer Band-Aid solutions. Ban zombie knives. They say, as if the real issue is the shape of the blade, not the scale of the violence. Others talk about compassion and integration while the streets bleed. And here's the kicker. We're not even talking about rural areas or border towns. This is happening in major cities, in places that were once considered safe, even prestigious. It's a breakdown of law, of leadership, of the very social contract that holds democracy together. And it's happening out in the open. Communities that once relied on the state to maintain order are now splitting into factions. The beginnings of de facto balkanization are already visible. Local rule is becoming the norm. Trust in the national government? Disintegrating. What happens when entire regions stop recognizing central authority as legitimate? When neighborhoods create their own systems of justice because the national one has failed? This isn't just a crime crisis, it's a governance crisis. The government isn't just failing to prevent violence, it's enabling it. Whether through cowardice, you've seen the headlines, but the atmosphere down here is completely different. Subscribe so you don't miss the raw footage I'm releasing later this week, and like this video to help push this unfiltered reporting up the algorithm. Incompetence or denial, the result is the same: a nation descending into localized chaos, where the line between criminal and civilian, authority and outlaw, is increasingly blurred. And while the media selectively filters what gets shown and who gets blamed, the damage is already done. The people living through this see the difference. They see the nightly sirens. They know the names of kids stabbed on their way home from school. They've heard of the hotel that got firebombed. They've watched politicians shrug their way through another press conference. And you know what's worse than violence? Hopelessness. The sense that this is just how it's going to be now. That the machetes are here to stay. That public safety is a relic of the past. That leadership means saying lessons will be learned after every tragedy, before doing absolutely nothing. When the public starts preparing for self-defense, when they start policing their own neighborhoods, when they stop believing the government can, or will, protect them, that's not just dysfunction. That's collapse. And the longer it continues, the harder it becomes to fix. You can't rebuild trust overnight. You can't de-radicalize people who spent years fearing for their lives. You can't re-establish order once vigilante justice becomes a default. What's happening in Britain right now isn't a temporary flare-up. It's a systemic unraveling. There's no easy fix, no clever slogan, no workshop that's going to patch this up. This is what happens when a government ignores warning signs, when leaders choose optics over outcomes, and when people are told to just wait patiently while their communities turn into combat zones. So here we are, a country known for afternoon tea, now known for machete gangs. A nation once proud of its institutions, now defined by their absence. And a public that's gone from politely discontent to outright fearful. It didn't have to be this way, but it is. If you've been watching this play out, if you've seen the headlines and wondered how it got this bad, now you know. And if nothing changes, this might just be the new normal. Let us know what you think in the comments. Are we looking at a temporary crisis or a permanent shift? Make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more deep dives into the chaos, the cover-ups, and the complete breakdown playing out in real time. We'll be watching. And the thing is, this didn't come out of nowhere. The warning signs were there years ago, buried in statistics no one wanted to talk about, ignored in community meetings that never made the evening news, brushed off by officials who promised community cohesion, while violence brewed in shadows. The rise in knife crime wasn't a fluke. The slow normalization of gang culture, unchecked youth violence, and the increasing brazenness of armed attacks, with tensions rising across the UK and thousands taking to the streets of London right now, it's more important than ever to see the full picture. If you want to stay updated on the situation as it unfolds, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. I'm covering the angles the mainstream media might miss, like this video if you believe in unfiltered reporting. None of that was sudden. What's shocking now is how all the loose threads have come together and snapped. We're not talking about isolated stabbings anymore. We're talking about coordinated gang movements, machetes swinging in crowded parks, and mass brawls in city centers. In some areas, it's routine. In others, It's still shocking, but that gap is closing fast. And while all this is happening, while communities are crying out for real answers, you've got a government more concerned about not inflaming tensions than actually protecting the public. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. Violence in the UK has become political quicksand. No one wants to take a hard stance. Everyone's afraid of saying the wrong thing. So instead of direct action, we get word salads, vague statements about underlying causes, half measures, cosmetic laws, and, this one's real, a proposal for kindness training in schools as a response to rising knife crime. That's where we are. Meanwhile, cities are holding on by a thread. Police stations are understaffed. Response times are delayed. Entire neighborhoods have become no-go zones. And in some cases, officers themselves are told not to intervene unless absolutely necessary. Why? Because they're either not equipped to handle the violence, or they're worried about the optics. That's what happens when you're more afraid of headlines and homicide rates. And then there's the justice system. SDS 40. If you haven't heard of it before, you've definitely felt the results. It's a policy that allows early release of prisoners in order to manage overcrowded prisons. Sounds like bureaucratic fine print, until you realize that over 40,000 reoffenders have hit the streets in just 1 year because of it. Violent offenders. Out. Early. Walking around like nothing happened. And in many cases, going right back to the same behavior that put them behind bars in the first place. The deterrent? Gone. The system? Stretched thin. The consequences? Playing out in real time. And it's not just the criminal side, it's the social fabric itself. Communities are breaking down. Suspicion is everywhere. People no longer trust the police, the media, or even their neighbors. When crime reports deliberately leave out key details, especially about who's committing the crime, it creates a vacuum. And that vacuum gets filled by speculation, resentment, and division. Censorship doesn't keep people calm. It makes them paranoid. And when the public sees crime being sanitized for the sake of political correctness, they don't feel safer. I know things feel really heavy in the UK right now. There's a lot of division and noise on the streets, but I want this channel to be a place where we can come together. If you want to be part of a supportive community, please subscribe. And like this video to show some love to everyone feeling anxious about the state of things right now. Stay safe out there, everyone. They feel lied to. Add to that the overwhelming presence of foreign nationals in the prison population and the refusal to deport even illegal arrivals, and you've got a perfect storm of public frustration and political denial. The perception, whether fair or not, is that the government prioritizes optics over safety, that it's more afraid of accusations of bias than it is of losing control of the streets. And in many ways, that control is already lost. We're seeing the rise of vigilante behavior, not just online, but in real life. Neighborhood patrols, illegally sourced pepper sprays, makeshift weapons, parents escorting kids to and from school in groups because they don't trust authorities can keep them safe. This is how civil order unravels, not all at once, but piece by piece, until everyone realizes they're on their own. And the global impact? Don't even get started. Foreign investors are fleeing the UK like it's radioactive. London used to be a crown jewel of international finance. Now, it's being reassessed by banks, by businesses, by foreign governments as a risk zone. Capital is leaving. Wealth is being moved offshore. And tourism, let's just say welcome to Machete, Britain, isn't doing wonders for the travel brochures. The ripple effects are enormous. Economic fragility, declining trust in institutions, a growing belief that the system is beyond repair. That Britain isn't just facing a temporary crisis, it's facing a long-term, irreversible transformation. And in Parliament, you'd think there'd be urgency. You'd think there'd be unity. Instead, you get the usual pantomime. Leaders throwing blame at each other like it's a sport, or while the public gets caught in the crossfire. Starmer blames outdated policies. Farage blames immigration. Meanwhile, knives keep flying, and neighborhoods keep burning. And let's be clear, this isn't about left or right anymore. It's about competence. It's about leadership. And it's about the glaring absence of both. People aren't just angry. They're exhausted. Exhausted by speeches, by platitudes, by policies that do nothing. You can only ask a country to keep calm and carry on for so long before people stop listening and start taking matters into their own hands. That's already happening. That social contract, the unwritten agreement that if you follow the rules, the state will protect you, it's broken. People don't feel protected. They don't feel heard. And they definitely don't feel safe. And when safety disappears, everything else follows. You've seen the headlines, but the atmosphere down here is completely different. Subscribe so you don't miss the raw footage I'm releasing later this week, and like this video to help push this unfiltered reporting up the algorithm. Schools become battlegrounds. Businesses relocate. Families move out of cities they've lived in for generations. And those who stay, they adjust, they harden, they adapt to a new reality where looking over your shoulder is second nature. Because that's a part no one wants to say out loud. This might not go back to normal. We may already be past the point of repair. What happens when gang culture becomes a default? When machete attacks don't make headlines anymore because they are too common? When people stop reporting crime because they know it won't be followed up? This isn't fear-mongering. This is what's being documented, right now, by real people in real places. And the state's response? Rebranding, press briefings, soft language, banning certain types of knives, as if criminals are worried about legality when they are running through train stations with foot-long machetes. The silence from leadership is deafening. The denial is worse, because the longer this goes unacknowledged, the more normalized it becomes. And that's a real danger, when chaos becomes expected and outrage turns into apathy. This is what societal decline looks like in real time. Not with a bang, but with a slow drip of ignored problems, watered-down policies, and public betrayal. A once-proud democracy teetering between order and breakdown, with a leadership class too afraid, or too indifferent, to stop it. And unless there's complete overhaul of policing, of justice, of policy, of communication, Britain isn't just facing a rough few years. It's staring down a future where chaos is the new governance model, where neighborhoods police themselves, where trust in government is gone, where fear fills the vacuum left by failed leadership. The question isn't, can this be fixed? The question is, who's going to do it? Because so far, all we've seen are empty words, broken systems, and a nation slowly slipping into the kind of instability people used to think only happened elsewhere. But this is now. This is Britain, and it's breaking in plain sight. And if you're thinking it can't get worse, it already is. Because beyond the streets, beyond the machetes, and beyond the headlines no one wants to write, there's a deeper rut, one that doesn't make front pages, but quietly erodes the foundations of any functioning society: legitimacy. The state has lost it, and the public knows. Let's be brutally honest here. When a government loses its moral authority, when it can no longer protect its citizens, enforce its laws, or even admit its failures, it doesn't matter what policies they announce next. It doesn't matter how many knives they ban or how many social programs they relaunch. People have already tuned out, with tensions rising across the UK and thousands taking to the streets of London right now. It's more important than ever to see the full picture. If you want to stay updated on the situation as it unfolds, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. I'm covering the angles the mainstream media might miss, like this video if you believe in unfiltered reporting. The system becomes theater, and the real decisions, the ones that matter, start getting made outside of government halls. You can see it happening, not just in protests or riots or viral videos of street fights, but in the tone, the conversations people are having, the way they talk about crime like it's part of daily life now. That resigned, exhausted tone of this is just how things are now. And let's talk about that tone for a second, because it's important. That's what you get when a population gives up on the idea of accountability. When people stop expecting justice, or leadership, or even basic honesty. When they stop being shocked and start adapting. That's not resilience, that's survival. Survival is what happens when systems collapse and people are forced to fill the void. Neighborhood watch groups? That's survival. Parents arming themselves with illegal sprays and self-defense gear? Survival. Kids being taught not just to avoid danger, but how to respond to it physically. That's not a society. That's a battleground. And who's paying the price? It's not the politicians. It's not the think tank crowd debating border policy from their second homes in Sussex. It's the working-class families trying to get through the week without losing a child to street violence. It's the small businesses closing early because they can't afford another break-in. It's the teachers walking into classrooms not knowing if today is a day a student brings in something sharp. We're witnessing the unraveling of civil society. Not in theory, in practice. Every time a criminal is released early and reoffends. Every time police pull back from a dangerous neighborhood. Every time the government releases a vague, sanitized press statement while families are burying their loved ones. That's the state retreating. That's the contract breaking. That's a warning siren everyone pretending not to hear. And what's next? Because let's not pretend this is the worst it can get. We've already seen the signs. Urban centers slipping into full-blown gang control. Prisons overwhelmed and unable to house the offenders they're supposed to. Law enforcement agencies begging for resources, only to be met with budget cuts and political spin. At some point, it stops being a crisis and starts being the norm. And here's what's especially infuriating. We're not talking about a lack of ability. The state could act. It could secure the borders. It could enforce the law consistently. It could deport offenders. It could prioritize safety over PR. But it won't. Not because it can't, but because doing so might upset the balance of polite politics. Because it's easier to host a workshop than to tackle violent crime head-on. This is where the UK finds itself. A nation more afraid of being impolite than ineffective. A leadership class more interested in being liked than being competent. And a population that's learning the hard way that when the government steps back, chaos steps in. The ripple effects are spreading. Property values are dropping in once stable neighborhoods. Insurance premiums are rising. Families are quietly pulling their kids from public schools. Small businesses are relocating or shutting down altogether. And worst of all, the next generation is growing up in an environment where fear is normal, where violence is casual, where trust in institutions is seen as naive. You want to fix that? You can't. Not quickly, not easily, and maybe not at all. Because it takes decades to rebuild what's lost in moments of crisis. And we're watching those moments pile up, day after day, headline after headline. There's something else happening too, something more psychological. It's the silence, the growing number of people who won't speak up. Not because they don't care, but because they don't see the point. Because they've been gaslit too many times by politicians who say we're taking it seriously, then do absolutely nothing. That silence, it's not peace. It's despair, and despair is dangerous. It breeds extremism. It makes people vulnerable to anyone who offers even a semblance of control. That's where radical movements are born, from the ashes of broken systems and ignored citizens. And when that happens, you don't just have violence on the streets. You have it in the discourse, in the institutions, and in the politics itself. We're not far from that. This isn't just about crime anymore. It's about what happens when a society starts to fragment from within, when the rules don't mean anything, when enforcement is selective, when justice is a coin flip, and when people feel abandoned by those who promise to serve them. You can't throw statistics at this and hope it goes away. You can't soften the language and expect things to calm down. The situation doesn't need more sensitivity. It needs honesty and bold, decisive leadership. But instead, we get press conferences, policy tweaks, social campaigns, rebranding efforts. It's like trying to plaster over a collapsing wall with sticky notes. And while officials debate semantics, the public is bleeding. Literally. And if you're in government right now, ask yourself something. When was the last time you walked down the high street at night? When was the last time you sat on a public bus after 9 p.m.? Talked to an A&E nurse on a Saturday night? Spoke to a mother who lost her son to a street stabbing? You haven't. Because if you had, you wouldn't be talking about community cohesion. You'd be talking about emergency powers. This is not sustainable. Not socially. Not economically. Not morally. And the longer it goes unaddressed, the more dangerous it becomes. We're not just losing control. We're losing the belief that control is even possible. And once that's gone, there's no coming back. But here's the truth no one wants to say out loud. If nothing changes, it won't be long before parts of the UK are simply no longer governed. Not in the real sense. Oh, sure, the laws will still exist on paper. The MPs will still sit in Parliament. The institutions will still pretend everything's under control. But on the ground, Real power will belong to whoever can enforce it. That's not a prediction. That's where we're headed. And let's really sit with this for a second, because the meltdown we're seeing isn't just criminal or political or economic. It's spiritual. Something deeper is breaking. Because when people stop believing the system is theirs, when they stop thinking that the law is for them, when they look around and feel like strangers in their own cities, what you get isn't just fear. You get disconnection, disillusionment, a population that stops caring whether the country succeeds or fails. And that kind of apathy, it's fatal. There's no reform committee that can fix that. No public awareness campaign. No cleverly worded slogan. The government can ban all the zombie knives it wants. It can filter footage, blur faces, and delete names from reports. But it can't force people to trust it again. Not after what they've seen. They've seen the machetes. They've seen the gangs. They've seen violent offenders walk free on technicalities, only to re-offend a week later. They've seen police back down while chaos erupts around them. They've seen hospitals overflow, schools locked down, and officials pretend it's all fine. And they've seen that when they ask hard questions, questions about policy, about immigration, about crime trends, they get branded as extremists for even daring to speak. That's the game now. Suppress, sanitize, spin. It's not just that the streets are violent. It's that the government's response has been to cover it up rather than clean it up, to censor instead of confront, to protect feelings over protecting lives. And in doing so, they created something far more dangerous than a crime wave, a credibility crisis. Because here's the thing. When people stop believing the official version of reality, they start turning to other sources. And those sources aren't always grounded in fact. They're emotional, reactionary, angry. That's when misinformation starts to thrive. That's when conspiracy fills a vacuum left by censorship. That's when public discourse fractures into chaos, just like the streets. So now we're here, a country on edge, communities fragmented, violence normalized, justice diluted, and leadership that refuses to lead. Meanwhile, the global perception of Britain is collapsing in real time. The rest of the world is watching. Investors, governments, international observers. They see what's happening. They see a modern state incapable of protecting its citizens, managing its borders, or enforcing its own laws. They see a leadership more focused on optics than order. They see wealthy citizens quietly moving their families and finances elsewhere, hedging their bets against the long-term viability of staying. You think billionaires are buying second passports and offshore properties because they are worried about taxes? No, they are worried about what Britain's becoming. And if the rich are quietly planning their exits, what does that tell you about what they see coming? It's not just financial decline. It's not just rising crime. It's the slow, grinding collapse of governability. Because a society can survive hardship. It can even survive spikes in crime. But it cannot survive a total breakdown in trust between the public and the institutions designed to protect them. And that's what we're witnessing. Day by day, that relationship is dissolving. Every time someone calls the police and gets told, there's nothing we can do. Every time a crime report is scrubbed clean of any useful detail. Every time a politician blames societal pressures instead of addressing the real roots of violence. Every time a protest is met with silence, unless it becomes politically useful. And now we're seeing people reach their breaking point. The protests are no longer fringe. They are growing. They are louder. They are angrier. And more, they are no longer asking for reform. They are demanding a reset, because they know that at this point, reform won't be enough. You can't reform a broken prison policy that dumps thousands of dangerous reoffenders back onto the streets because there's simply no room to hold them. You can't reform a police force that's afraid to act without a media consultant clearing their statements first. You can't reform a government that responds to rising crime rates with workshops and censorship. That's not reformable. That's a collapse in progress. And if that sounds dramatic, it should, because it is. People are arming themselves not because they are reckless, but because they feel abandoned. The state is missing in action. What else do you expect them to do? Sit quietly while gangs run wild, while crime stats get manipulated, while the hospitals fill up and politicians send thoughts and prayers. No, they are done waiting. Neighborhood patrols, defensive weapons, digital watch groups. This is what it looks like when the people take back what the state has surrendered. And while that might sound empowering, let's not kid ourselves. It's also a sign of desperation. This is a point where people stop thinking like citizens and start thinking like survivors. And the most dangerous part of all of this, it's becoming normal. This is the slippery slope, the moment when a society gets used to the sirens. When politicians stop getting grilled for failure because failure is now expected. When the public shrugs at another stabbing because at least it wasn't in our borough this time. Desensitization is the final stage of decay. It's when people stop hoping for better. And once that happens, good luck getting it back. Britain is walking that line right now. And the state still has a choice. It could take real action, not symbolic policies, not PR stunts, but serious structural reform. Close the early release loopholes. Restore authority to overwhelmed police forces. Enforce borders consistently and transparently. Deport violent offenders. End the censorship that treats the public like children. It could do all of that, but it won't. At least, not yet. Because too many leaders are still clinging to the illusion that this is just a phase, a blip, a media cycle. It's not. It's a turning point. A country can only hold its breath for so long before something gives. And if the public keeps feeling ignored, condescended to, and unprotected, it won't be long before they stop cooperating with the system altogether. What does that look like? It's not just more crime. It's more division, more hostility between communities, more populist backlash, more people turning to radical solutions out of desperation. And eventually, you get full social fragmentation, a state that technically exists but has no real control. We are this close. So if you think this story is just another cycle of bad news, think again. It's not just about crime. It's about identity, cohesion, trust, or the invisible glue that holds a nation together. That glue is drying up. And unless leadership wakes up, fast, Britain slide from a first-world democracy to a fractured, semi-governable mess won't just be a risk. It'll be a reality. And here's a final punch. No one's coming to save you. Not the policymakers with their polished press releases. Not the party leaders trading insults in Parliament while entire boroughs slip into lawlessness. Not the think tanks. Not the media spin doctors, and certainly not the institutions still clinging to reputations they haven't downed in years. Because if they were going to act, really act, it would have happened by now. We wouldn't be 53,000 knife attacks deep. We wouldn't be seeing a 320% surge in machete violence since 2000. We wouldn't be watching hospitals overflow with trauma victims while politicians tweet about unity and resilience. There's a word for this, abdication, not of the throne, but of responsibility. And when a government abandons its core duty to protect its people, you don't get just crime. You get collapse. Social, political, and eventually territorial. A nation where authority becomes symbolic, not functional. Where laws exist on paper, but enforcement is optional. Where fear does the governing, and survival sets the rules. Right now, that's the path Britain's on. A country drifting further into a state of unmanaged decline, held together not by leadership, but by the sheer force of public tolerance. And that tolerance, it's almost gone. You can hear it in every conversation that starts with, "I'm not racist," but, or "What else are we supposed to do?" You can see it in the way communities are turning inward, losing faith in the idea of national unity. You can feel it in the quiet resignation when another violent crime goes unpunished and unacknowledged. People are tired, and tired people make different decisions. They stop calling the police. They stop engaging with institutions. They stop believing in elections or political promises. And eventually, they stop caring who's in charge because leadership stopped mattering a long time ago. That's when the real danger begins, because a vacuum left by a weak state doesn't stay empty. Something fills it, whether it's gangs, private security networks, radical movements, or angry collectives looking for scapegoats. Someone always steps in when authority steps out. So, what's next? A return to order, or a slide into something far more permanent and dangerous? That depends on whether the country wakes up before the lights go out. Let us know where you stand. Is there still time to fix this? Or have we crossed a line that can't be walked back? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Like the video if you're done watching from the sidelines. Share this with someone who still thinks Britain's just having a rough patch. And if you want more honest breakdowns of the chaos they won't put on the front page, subscribe. Because we're not here to sugarcoat it. We're here to document the fall, one headline at a time.